My husband cheated on me and said, "It's divorce." I reported it to my father-in-law and he called me in a panic. Well, after being married for this long, it's only natural that a man might find himself attracted to another woman. A little affair here or there isn't such a big deal. Quit nagging. Faced with the fact of his infidelity, my husband, Lawrence, shouted back in a fit of anger. "Instead of worrying about that, you should be getting ready for Christmas. You've got the decorations and the Christmas tree ready, right?" "I'm going back to my parents' house for the New Year holidays," I answered. When I said that, Lawrence pulled a folded piece of paper from a drawer in the cabinet and thrust it into my hands. "What if you're leaving me behind then? Let's just get a divorce. Here, I've already filled out the divorce papers." Sure enough, when I opened it, there was the divorce form filled out with Lawrence's name. "Why do you have this ready?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because the affair you're accusing me of is my true love," he said, his voice dripping with smugness. "Ah, so that's his angle," I thought to myself, feeling a surge of anger. Caught in an affair with a woman 20 years younger than him, he stood his ground. What a sorry excuse for a husband. In a rage, I signed the divorce papers with unusually large letters. The tears streaming down my face weren't from sadness. They were because I felt utterly pathetic for having supported such a man for so long. If that's the case, I thought, I need to make sure Lawrence experiences the kind of heartache that leaves a mark. I packed my things and left the house, heading straight to the county court to submit the divorce papers. Leaving City Hall, I kicked a stone on the ground with all my might and started walking. I'm Kayla, a 55-year-old housewife and office worker at an insurance agency. My 30-year-old daughter is already married and lives in an apartment in the same town. I lived alone with my husband, Lawrence. Lawrence quit his job when our daughter graduated from junior college and declared himself a day trader, living aimlessly for the last 10 years. I don't know whether he's not making money or not doing anything at all, but now he hardly contributes to our living expenses. Despite my bitter feelings towards him, I've been supporting my daughter and myself by working while he did as he pleased. And this is the thanks I get, a cheating scandal and divorce papers. Until our daughter Marilyn graduated, Lawrence worked at a financial institution. A perfectly ordinary husband, he never did any housework, but he left for work in the morning and came home at night. He had overnight business trips about once a month and weekly company drinking parties or entertainment evenings. He wasn't particularly bad with alcohol or money, just a typical husband you could find anywhere. But looking back, I wonder if it was suspicious even then, given his industry. I never doubted his business trips and entertainment as anything but necessary, but perhaps those were the days he cheated. Being a ladies' man was his only real flaw. My friend just started working at the same company as Dad before she was married, my daughter told me. Dad's got a bad reputation there. He's always hitting on the young female staff, inviting party hostesses to drink parties, and just loves girls in general. That's kind of embarrassing. There are also rumors of his affairs, so be careful, Mom. Sadly, until Marilyn told me that, I had never suspected Lawrence's wandering eye. While juggling housework, raising a child on my own, and maintaining a full-time job, I never had the spare energy to worry about Lawrence's actions. Lawrence sat around even when I was busy with housework, and when Marilyn was little and crying, he wouldn't even pick her up. Housework and childcare were solely the wife's duty. A man was supposed to just work, and then meals would be served, and the house and clothes kept clean as if by magic. He must have thought at that time, exhausted from domestic chores and work, that I couldn't even express my grievances to Lawrence. Lawrence and I both have no siblings. My father passed away due to illness when I was in 6th grade, and since then, my mom raised me by herself. It's all right, we have Dad's insurance money and I'm working too. You don't need to worry about anything, Kayla. My mom, a medical office worker, always said to me with a smile. But I know that my mom sacrificed her desire to send me to a junior college. To me, she is not only the most respectable person in the world, but also the most wonderful woman. Now at 75, she still lives energetically at her home. She has a boyfriend, and they laugh about being a 155-year-old couple, always looking happy. On the other hand, Lawrence's mother was a hopeless case. One day she eloped with her lover, leaving her husband and Lawrence behind without a trace. Fortunately or unfortunately, Lawrence was already in college at the time, beyond the age of needing parental care. Still, It seems my father-in-law struggled to balance unfamiliar household duties with his job. "Kayla, please just don't have an affair," my father-in-law tearfully requested when I married Lawrence. "I don't care if the housekeeping is a bit rough, and you don't need to pamper Lawrence, but please, whatever you do, don't have an affair. There's nothing more painful." His dad, being a man of means, generously lent us his house to live in for free while he moved into a small rental apartment. He's quiet and kind, never imposing or making unreasonable demands on us. I am grateful to him and hold him dear. I hate to upset him, but it seems I have no choice but to explain our divorce and its reasons. After submitting the divorce papers, I stopped by Marilyn's apartment before heading to my parents' home. I wondered if it would be an inconvenience to show up unannounced, but Marilyn was home alone. "What's this all about? A sudden divorce?" "Cough, cough," she said, shocked by my story, choking on her coffee. "Are you okay?" "It's because you surprised me like that," I said. I waited for Marilyn to calm down before detailing everything that had happened. "So Dad had the divorce papers prepared well in advance?" Marilyn said, tilting her head as she munched on cookies I had bought on the way. I don't know who she takes after, but she has always had the insight to see through things. Then suddenly Marilyn looked up. "Dad has always loved women, right?" "Well, yes," I said. "I even sneaked a peek at his computer, and it was full of images and videos that I can't even mention. Plus, he was often out of the house for business trips or drinking parties, so it wouldn't be strange if he was cheating. But until now, he hadn't slipped up." I could kind of understand what Marilyn was getting at, I thought, and yet this time he slipped up so badly that even I noticed his affair. Maybe Dad intentionally let you catch on to his affair so he could be with that woman. If he calmly discussed divorce, he would have to explain everything. That's why he might have set it up so I would impulsively file the divorce papers. That would explain why the divorce form was already filled in and signed, and indeed, I had acted exactly as he might have anticipated. Unforgivable, I thought. Indeed, Marilyn agreed. Although now an apparently unsuccessful day trader, Lawrence had worked at a top financial institution for many years. He probably had some savings and he didn't put all of his severance pay into our household. He must be up to something. "Mom, you can't just let this go. You have to show Dad he can't get away with this. It's just too much," Marilyn said, tears threatening to fall. She took my hands and spoke with determination. I squeezed her hand in return, and the tears I couldn't hold back anymore started to flow. I felt so frustrated, just utterly frustrated. Leaving Marilyn, who couldn't accompany me due to upcoming guests, I headed to my parents' home alone. "Even though you said you'd scare the hell out of him, he's still your dad. Are you sure this is okay?" I asked Marilyn, somewhat worried, before leaving. She sighed, as if exasperated. "If it were anyone else, it might not be so bad, but it's because he's my dad. It's embarrassing to be pointed out by friends that your father is fond of women. So yes, I'm really okay with this." Hearing Marilyn say this, I decided to tell my father-in-law everything. When I arrived at my parents' home, I rang the doorbell with that resolution in mind. "Hello!" My mom's cheerful voice was followed by the door opening. Her face, looking much younger than her 75 years, greeted me with a big smile. "Oh, Kayla, welcome. It must be cold out there." I stopped by Marilyn's place and warmed up a bit. "May I come in?" "Of course, come on in. Were you and Dad having a nice time?" "Sorry to interrupt." I apologized to my mom as I entered and headed to the living room. It was the same small, old, but warm house I had grown up in. Now it was a home where my mom shares her life with someone she loves. As I walked into the living room, that person was reading a leaflet on the sofa. "Hi, Dad," I said. He looked up and smiled warmly at me. Kayla, I thought you'd be busy with Christmas preparations by now, or are you done with those?" Indeed, the man my mom was with was my father-in-law, Lawrence's father. They had suppressed their feelings for each other for a long time due to their roles as in-laws through their children's marriage. However, now in the twilight of their lives, they had finally allowed themselves to be honest about their feelings. Lawrence didn't know about this yet. "Dad," I started, looking at the gentle face of my father-in-law, Jacob, so unlike Lawrence's. I started to cry. "What's wrong, Kayla?" Jacob changed his expression in alarm. My mom, who had brought a tray with a mug on it, also looked surprised to see me crying. She quickly set the tray on the table and sat me down on the sofa. "Dad, Mom, before I came here, I submitted the divorce papers to the county court, I managed to say through my tears. I explained everything to them in detail. Probably the most shocked of all was Jacob. Lawrence did what? Cheated? Of all things, Kayla, I'm truly sorry, he said, apologizing deeply after hearing my story. Hey, pause for a moment. Would you care to support us? Like this video and subscribe for more. Now let's dive back into the story. It's not your fault, Dad. Please don't apologize. I always told him, if anything, not to have an affair after his mother ran off with another man. I thought he understood how painful that is, Jacob muttered sadly, and then picked up the phone from the table. Despite being 80 years old, he was more adept with mobile phones than I was. I'll call Lawrence over here so we can talk. An affair is bad enough, but to divorce you without giving you a dime, that I cannot allow. He stood up and quietly left the living room. My phone rang a few minutes later. It was Lawrence, and I rejected the call at first, but he kept calling back. After the 12th persistent call, I reluctantly answered. What do you mean, Kayla? Lawrence sounded utterly distraught. My dad called me super angry, telling me to come to your parents' house right now. It's probably about the divorce papers I filed, but why your parents' house? Did you call my dad over there? Lawrence, unaware of his father and my mother's relationship, would indeed be confused. More importantly, you should probably come quickly. You know how much your dad hates infidelity, right? You told my dad I cheated? It's the cause of the divorce. I couldn't just not mention it. Lawrence was likely worried about upsetting his wealthy dad, who had been letting us stay in his house for free. Despite being very active and youthful, Lawrence was certainly aware of his dad's wealth. Are you at your parents' house? And your mother? We're both here, and of course your father is too. After I told him that, I said, knowing that his dad had heard about his infidelity. He must be feeling anything but calm right now. Jacob had been deeply hurt by his wife's affair and subsequent elopement. That's why he would surely not forgive Lawrence's infidelity. While waiting for Lawrence in the living room, I glanced at what Jacob had been looking at. It was a leaflet for a nursing home. Are you and Mom discussing moving into a nursing home? I asked my mom, scanning through the leaflet. Well, yes, Jacob and I can still manage on our own, but who knows how long we'll stay that way. We're both old now. My mom looked at Jacob with a soft and loving expression. That's why we're looking into nursing homes where we both can stay. You two really get along well. I'm happy to see you so content, Mom. But now there's a big worry with you suddenly getting a divorce, Kayla. My mom expressed her concern. My father and in-law returned to the living room holding a piece of paper in his right hand. Just as I was about to ask what the paper was, the doorbell rang. It must be Lawrence. Don't worry, I'll get it. I stood up with determination and walked to the door, opening it to find Lawrence with a hardened expression. What's the meaning of this? As soon as he saw my face, Lawrence's expression grew stern. Why would you discuss my infidelity with my dad, and why here at your parents' house? You'll understand once you come in. Why don't you come up? I was going to anyway. Lawrence came in and hurried to the living room. When he saw our parents sitting together on the sofa, his movement halted. Seeing them together, almost like a long-married couple, he must have realized the situation. Dad, Mom, are you two by any chance sitting down? Are you together? No way! Sit down when I'm telling you to. His dad's voice boomed through the living room like thunder. Startled by his force, I straightened my own back, seeing how frightening he could be when angry was a new experience. Chastened by the yelling, Lawrence, who had thrust the divorce papers at me with such audacity before, now sat in front of his dad with a frightened expression. I've heard the story from Kayla. You blew up when she pointed out your affair and then handed her the divorce papers. That was, well, and the divorce papers were already filled out, right? Well, that's just how things turned out, or a misunderstanding of... I'm asking you a direct question. Answer without the excuses again, his dad's thunderous voice rang out. Flustered, Lawrence muttered a quiet, It's true, I'm sorry. Lawrence, after all the pain you felt from your mother's affair, how could you do the same to Kayla, and to prepare divorce papers in advance and have her submit them? I just handed her the papers. I never thought she'd file them. Do you think that excuse is acceptable? Do you realize how much you've hurt Kayla? As he spoke, his dad spread out the paper he had brought with him on the table. It was an unfilled marriage certificate. I wondered when he obtained them. Lawrence, as you've guessed, I am in a relationship with Kayla's mother. You've deeply hurt and insulted someone very important to me, my partner's daughter. I had no idea. I never dreamed you two could be involved. That doesn't change the fact that you cheated, his dad rebuked Lawrence sharply, speaking with the finality of a judge delivering a verdict. As such, I will no longer assist you in any way. The house I've been lending you for free will be put up for sale immediately. You'd better start looking for an apartment and move out quickly. What? I don't have the money to live in an apartment. Aren't you making money with day trading? Regardless of your financial status, the house will be sold right after New Year's, so you can't stay there anymore. No. Lawrence slumped for a moment, but then noticed the marriage certificate on the table. His expression turned desperate. What's this marriage certificate for? You're not planning to get married, are you? Exactly. We are getting married. If you do that, it will have the inheritance I'd receive from you, Lawrence blurted out reflexively, then immediately clamped his mouth shut, realizing his gaffe. But once spoken, his words couldn't be taken back. What was that? I seized the moment to chime in. Your dad has always been so generous, watching over us quietly, lending us his home for all these years. And now hearing about his remarriage, all you worry about is your inheritance? That's disgraceful. That's right, and I can't forgive what you've done to Kayla either, my mom joined in. Find an apartment and move out quickly. We can't contest the sale of the house since it belongs to your dad, but I can't afford the rent for myself and for her, Lawrence muttered under his breath, then quickly covered his mouth again. But I had heard him. Rent for myself and her for 2 apartments? Lawrence, are you paying rent for your mistress too? His voice thundered louder than ever. I'm sorry not contributing enough to household expenses, and yet you do this? It's too much, Lawrence. It's disrespectful to both Kayla and Marilyn. Both his dad's and my mom's faces were flushed with indignation. Anger welled up inside me, making my stomach churn. I've had enough, Lawrence. Once the real estate market opens after the new year, find an apartment and move out of the house. But you will not receive any inheritance. I plan to spend my wealth freely. Eventually, we'll move into a luxury care facility, so there won't be much left for you, his dad stated emphatically, pointing towards the door. The discussion is over. Get out now. Wait, please. I don't have that kind of money. Enough. Get out. Resigned to his fate, Lawrence stood up weakly and left the house. Relying on his dad's wealth, living carelessly and squandering money on women, it seemed that was his plan all along. I felt no sympathy as I watched his shaky departure. When the new year came, my dad followed through with his promise to sell the house. It sold quickly. Lawrence ended up in a dilapidated, cheap apartment. It turned out he hadn't seriously pursued day trading in the last decade, living off his severance instead. He had planned to rely on his dad's wealth for his retirement when he could no longer pay his mistress's rent. She quickly left him. It appeared he had been attracting women by flaunting potential wealth. Indeed, when the money ran out, so did the relationship. Now Lawrence is living alone, juggling multiple part-time jobs. My dad sold the house and gave me all the proceeds as alimony. With that money, I purchased a small but comfortable used condo where I live happily. On weekends, I invite friends over for meals or visit my parents' home and Marilyn's place, enjoying a fulfilling life. Meanwhile, my parents submitted their marriage certificate and are now officially married. My mom struggled to raise me, and so seeing her smile happily every day is truly a joy. Let's conclude the story shortly. As the years passed, Kayla blossomed in her new life. She found solace in her work, her daughter, and her newfound independence. She had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed and was finally living life on her terms. Lawrence, on the other hand, never recovered from the fall from grace. The woman he had left his wife for eventually tired of his dwindling finances and moved on, leaving him alone and bitter. He never achieved the financial success he had dreamed of and was forced to live a meager existence haunted by the ghosts of his past. Meanwhile, Kayla's parents, Jacob and her mother, thrived in their newfound love. Their marriage, a testament to their enduring affection, brought them joy and companionship in their twilight years. They shared their days with laughter and warmth, their love a beacon of hope in a world often filled with darkness. Kayla's story, though born of betrayal and heartbreak, ultimately became a tale of resilience and redemption. She emerged from the ashes of a failed marriage, stronger and wiser, ready to embrace the future with open arms. As the sun set on her life, she found peace knowing that she had not only survived, but had triumphed, leaving behind a legacy of strength and love. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching and see you in the next story.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.